So on your next project, you need to create a form, and it's got to be really complicated, and it's got to have all sorts of kind of validation. Oh, look, the first name was not okay, it's required, so there. Okay, now go to the next, and now there's a progress bar, and there's multiple pages, and there's conditional logic. And oh wait, look at, like, I can change my first name and it actually knows who I am. Well, that's nice. That's pretty cool. So it pulls in the state into the DOM and it does all this stuff, right? And then oh, you can click yes and there's a message box, and then you click no and there's none and there's a new question, and then oh, and there's yes. Okay, great. And then the button appears and you go to the next one, and it's all this stuff going on, right? So this is the form you need to create, and there's formatting for numbers, and oh, and it validates it and confirms that it's the right amount, and then there's differing requirements. So watch this. If you click here, oh, like whatever your best way to touch is the required field, and the other one stops being required. So it's like a bit of complexity here, and it is uncertain that you'd be able to do this kind of thing in vanilla JavaScript or something. If you were even considering that, you might just be like, I'm going straight to Angular or straight to React or whatever. But I'm here to tell you, before you do any of that, don't. Instead, I would recommend you use compression-oriented programming by Muratori. And he's of the Handmade Hero fame and has really changed my perspective on how I program, even though he does it with C programming, and I'm on the web, which could not be further apart. Anyways, the value you get out of this, instead of going right to the framework and just jumping in there and using everything that you've learned about the framework and stuff to try and use it for this problem, like, consider you can come up with a better result that could be easier to reason about, easier for someone else to take on, and just more flexible, more maintainable, and just more of a joy to work in, and with very little overhead. So this whole thing was created in vanilla JavaScript, and some of the principles here is that I've kind of taken on is the idea that there should be very few jumps around the code. So I don't use a lot of functions. Like, a lot of code is just linear, you know. I do believe in, don't repeat yourself. If you have a function that you're using multiple places, you should. But in a lot of cases, I found I just didn't need to create a bunch of functions. So the end result is something I'm really proud of. It loads, incredibly fast. It's got routing. It's got a bunch of conditional logic. It uses Ajax to talk to the server. It's everything I was getting out of React, but without any of the overhead and a lot more. I just want to show you one feature. So this whole thing is just two files. It's a form file. It's a form.php file, which is basically just an HTML file, and it's app.js. It's a script that's pulled in at the bottom right here. So I just want to show you how I was able to create something that was more useful for me for this project than React would have been. And I'm not trying to say the code that I've created is going to be useful for you. The methodology is, though. That's my contention. The code I've written is the best for this particular project. I've found that since I created this, not a week ago, I've already done a new project, and I ended up using a similar structure, but I didn't use templating at all. And this templating thing is what I'm about to show you, and this is very useful for this particular project because this is a very form-heavy project. It's not pulling in dynamic data from Ajax or anything like that. It's got the form already created, and the user just has to enter all the data. So what I'm doing here is I've created my own little templating language, basically. It's kind of like a domain-specific language, if I may. But it's very simple once you start to see it. The first character, or the first set of characters, is the command. Everything else is like the arguments of the command. So all of my main div tags, which are hidden from the start, and then the system does a DOM update function, which tells whether it should show or not based on some of the state settings. They're all encased in these parentheses. So wherever you see an opening parenthesis, you're going to see a closed parenthesis. But what's really great visually is you just look down. You don't have to try and like find it. You don't have to ignore other parentheses. And believe it or not, this was a big problem when trying to do this project for React, which I initially built a project like this for React using a lot of form fields and stuff. And you end up managing parentheses because you've got functions inside of functions and this kind of thing, and it gets out of control. So this is much simpler for this particular project. And all I'm doing is I am treating this template as a string. It's basically a string with new lines. That's the only reason I use a template tag and not a variable, because you can't really encapsulate new lines in a variable in a cross-platform way, I found. Without without escaping an end character, which is not something you want to do, hundreds of times per your page. But okay, so this whole page right here is about 490 lines, and it's very easy to reason about once you start to be able to read the templating language. But you can, just from what I've told you about open parentheses and closed parentheses, you can see where the pages begin and end. Open parenthesis, page 3, close parenthesis, page 4. Page 3, and then open parenthesis, page 4, and then etc. And you may even just glancing at this be able to reason about some other things. You'll see there's a little arrow, and it says next, and then it says 4. And then over here, you have an arrow going the other way, and it says back, and it's going 3. This means page 3. Probably could have even made that even more intuitive, but look, this is what I'm doing. This is the template function. Actually, I can show you. It's actually getting pulled into the inner HTML of a div tag called app, and the template tag is being pulled. The template function, the first argument, is this entire template tag. And really, the goal here is to have as little things to understand as possible. So you may have noticed I'm using a get function, and it's like, well, what the hell is that, man? Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's a very simple function. It's this. In fact, there's really only 2 functions that are unique to this program. That are like utility functions, kind of in the vein of like jQuery or something. And this is it. This gets the element by ID, kind of equivalent to a $sign with a quotes, and it's, it just gets the element and returns it. And that just cleans up my code a great deal. But anyways, so what we're doing here now is that template tag. So everything here in this ID template, everything down here is sent to this template function, and it's returned, and it's put in this app div tag right here. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but this is basically just a for loop that goes line by line through all the stuff. It uses regular expressions a lot, so if you don't know regular expressions, you'd have to learn that. And that may seem like a downside. It's like, well, why do I got to learn this just to use this? But the reality is, learning regular expressions is much more, they're incredibly powerful. And when you know them, you'll be able to use them in ways that no amount of learning React or Angular or anything that will be able to give you the kind of flexibility that you get with regular expressions. It's kind of a silly comparison because they're not in the same field, so I'm not bashing those things and saying that regular expressions is better than React. That doesn't make any sense. But I'm saying, like, regular expressions are great, and you should learn them, and they will make you a better programmer, and they will make you a more powerful programmer in what you're able to do. And as you'll see here, they're not all that complex. This just parses out a few things. If the line begins with a text, then what we're doing is we're parsing out a few items of that, and we're creating down here, you can see this underscore HTML. This is what the template is going to change. It is going to return, sorry. So you'll see here, I'm returning underscore HTML. So throughout this, it's looping through all the tags and it's adding to this HTML element, which is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it's returned and set to the inner HTML of the app. And it's only done once at the beginning of the program, and it can go through this very quickly. Even with the regular expressions and everything, it's very fast. But yeah, so we're parsing out these different arguments, and things come out at the end. And now I didn't have to write all this code. You know, I get the benefits of the kind of component aspect of React without all the downsides of it. And yeah, and in return, I get something that is perfectly customizable for this project. And it's incredibly flexible. And what I mean by that is I'm not trying to be dogmatic about the way that you should use this. If you want to use raw HTML, all you have to do is put an underscore and then put the HTML there. So I'm not trying to force you to make elements. And I keep saying you, but I'm not trying to force myself to make elements. Because again, this isn't a framework. You know, I'm not trying to like say people should use this. For this project, it really made sense. But say another developer comes on, I'm not trying to make them do anything crazy. And I'm not trying to like box myself in that way. If I want to put HTML right in the middle of like where I'm generating stuff, I should just be able to do that. And yeah, anyways, I'll say what the advantage of this was, you know, I'm not trying to just, you know, I wanted something that's very easy to scan. When you're dealing with so many forms and there's so many different conditions, like these brackets mean something a little different. That means the thing will slide down when some conditions are set. And that's set in a different part of the application. So it's not like I'm doing any kind of magic here. Like there's nothing magical happening. It's just generating HTML, and then the HTML state is you know is handled in different aspects of the site. But the advantage is I can so easily move things around. I just have incredible flexibility of what I do with this form. And it means that it's just very maintainable. It's very easy to add features. It's very easy to bug fix. I don't have to, you know, like, honestly, I'll say for this project, I Googled, you know, weird messages less, you know, like barely at all, I would say, which when you start to really think about how unusual that is these days, because, you know, if you've ever used like NPM as like Node's package manager, you know that if something goes wrong, you're going to have to Google that, because it's like you're not going to be able to reason about this incredibly large library. And sometimes you just have to leave the Node modules folder. So anyways, I'm really excited about this, and I'd love feedback, and I'm really interested in hearing what people's reservations are about this kind of style. I have an idea of some of them, but really I think this is something that we as web programmers need to approach more seriously. I believe we're on the wrong path in a lot of ways. You know, like you look at all these different frameworks like that have come out over the last 17 years and it's like none of them are lasting. What does that tell you? It means we're not creating anything that's long lasting. It's not like we're adhering to some doctrine that is not paying back. I'm glad I learned React, because it did teach me a lot of stuff that like I implemented in here, but I found that the more I got away from that, and the less I used more like functional programming, and more I got into more procedural imperative coding using a compression-oriented mindset, the easier and my program got to read was to read and write and debug, and it would be easier for other people to pick it up as well too. So that's it. Thanks.